Hi, everyone. I thought that it might be a little bit easier for me to go through and talk about the case study because there seem to be a lot of situations going on. So I wanted to go ahead and maybe take this time to just talk about what I would do as Madeline, who is the director of Res Life. So I want to go ahead and just talk a little bit about this and figure out kind of what I would do. So how I broke this down while answering this question, because there was a lot that had happened throughout this whole time, I thought that it would be helpful to break it down within the frames. So I wanted to break it down starting with the structural frame, human resources, political, and symbolic, because I think they all are prevalent in this situation. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with that. So first and foremost, with the structural aspect of the institution. So Anywhere College seems to be going through kind of a changing and shift of culture. It seems that they have just recently became more involved really with the LGBT community as undergraduate students, and they really have transformed the college. And so that has really, I think, changed what it used to be. So it looks like Anywhere College used to be a Lutheran seminary. That's where it was founded. And then now it's a private school, but I think that truly is where a lot of this is stemming from. Also, I think that there's needs to be talk about how to design just more organization around why are they there, what are they, who are they. I think that has caused some conflict even to the case study still arising. I think a lot of the population of alumni as well as current students are really split down the middle of what type of experience that they've had as in college. So thought that was really interesting. I hope by the end of this I can really figure out what I would do, because I think there's a lot of ways that the director could go, because there are a lot of students who are involved that really need service. And so I'm hoping that as I talk through this, it will really help me identify what I can do in the meantime before I make a decision. So maybe this whole process of talking through it will be helpful. But that's kind of where it came out from the structural. I also think that there's a lot of authority involved, and that can sometimes be troublesome as well, because you have the director who reports to the dean, but then you have the dean who's involved who reports to the president. And it seems that the president is getting, all this authority and all this information from other people. So there are a lot of people with their hats in the game. So that's something that I thought was also very interesting. And that, I think, took me to my next step, which was thinking about the human resources structure in that frame and how I could use everybody who was involved in the situation and try to figure out what are our needs, what are the hierarchy of needs. So I really thought about that, because I think, for instance, Gary, who's the student who had, all of this kind of offense happen to him, he's going to need a little bit more needs than maybe Emily Anywhere, who is contributing to the institution. It's just they're coming from very different fundamental areas. And I have to evaluate my role to be, an advocate for students, because I'm, the director of Res Life, and I'm really trying to make sure that everything that's here is covered. So, this was a lot at play. There was a lot of people who had different dynamics, different interpersonal needs. But I think what I would do is honestly figure out what the mutual influence is. So what can we do to potentially work through this and support our students the best that we can? Because it seems that Gary needs a lot of assistance, but it seems that, the Globe also needs a lot of assistance. Lutheran Light needs assistance. It seems that even current students are in need of assistance, even if those services are completely different. Then, Gary may need something that's completely different than the student who is potentially thinking of unenrolling because of everything that's happening. So I definitely want to make sure that in my role, students are my focus. And I think that throughout this, that's where it then bumped to political, because even though students are who you're serving, you also have this hierarchy of everyone being in power, everyone having this authority. And so I tried to divvy out to figure out who I was reporting to and what my role was and who I thought could answer some of these questions. So first and foremost, I report to the dean. So the dean is really going to be my liaison. So it looks like Cornelia Hudson is the dean. And so that individual, in my eyes, would be my person that can help me figure out exactly what I need to do in all of this. So I don't hear or read that she came up a lot of the time, but it does seem like a lot of the situations that are going on, everyone seems to be approaching me about it. So first and foremost, I would probably have a conversation with the dean and say, here is what's going on. Let's try to figure out how we can bring everyone together and really open up those communications, because there has to be some negotiations and there has to be some bargaining, because everyone seems to be unhappy. So it seems that the president is unhappy. We have alumni that's unhappy. We have a trustee member that's unhappy. So it seems as if all of those people who are involved have high authority and have a lot of say in what the institution does. So I think bringing the focus back to the student body, I think, is very important, and understanding that the culture of an institution can change, and the institution will then need to provide additional services to help advocate for these students. And I think, it seems that there's been a lot of advocacy for the LGBT community, but there hasn't been a lot of advocacy for some of those students who feel differently. And so while I may disagree with how they feel, I need to make sure that they're also getting the services that they need, because they are just as much a student at the institution as, anyone else who was a student prior to them. So I need to make sure that that is a part of my communication as well. So kind of where I'm coming from in answering this question of what I would do, because it does seem like the LGBT community has brought a lot of further development into the organization and really brought a lot of students to really feel that the institution is bettering themselves. So potentially bringing it up to the student body, maybe asking student government if they want to come in and talk a little bit more about this, and maybe sitting down with the board of trustee members and letting them know that, the culture in the organization is shifting. How can we identify what those shifts are, and what can we do to best serve the students? And so I think that's where I was coming from, trying to think more about what my role was, because everybody's role on campus, I think, is going to be different. And hopefully all of those connections will work to further the institution's goals. But I do think that there needs to be some conversation about what those goals are and how, the organization in general can really achieve those. And it seems that, based on the knowledge that we have, based on like before the case study, this happened 10 years ago. And this is when this was kind of shifting, where this culture had happened. And there seemed to be just some tension that was constantly rising. And so I think that between faculty, between students, between alumni, so I think that identifying that early on as well would have been helpful. But, being the situation that it is, I think it's challenging to figure out what you would do because there's so many right answers, but I chose to take it from kind of a framework standpoint. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. I'm really excited to hear the discussion on this because I think a lot of us are probably going to have a lot of different views, but I really am looking forward to hearing more about what students think. So, all right, thanks so much. Have a good night.